Hi, good morning. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Alexander, let's dive right into the first question.
First one is from me this morning with a networking question. I have a Cisco 2960L switch and want to put an IoT device on its own VLAN. How do I configure this so that I can still control this device via Apple HomeKit on the network, either wired or by Wi-Fi?
Go ahead, Jason.
So I'm going to assume that you know how to create the VLAN part of it. And then you've got two options. You can set up an inter VLAN route for HomeKit connectivity, which relies on MDNS or Bonjour, right, to cross the two networks. Or you can use inter VLAN routing to keep IoT on a completely separate VLAN and then make it reachable by enabling, I want to say, UDP port 553.
Next question.
Zach Stylesmith in Chautauqua, New York. What do you do when you only have a center cluster and an auditorium because all the other amps are blown and the show director is upset that some people can't be heard very well using an X32?
Go ahead, Alexander.
Well, you would immediately try to find replacement amplifiers. My suggestion would be to get those repaired and just see if you can go to your local PA rental house and just rent some replacement amplifiers. I mean, yes, you can go out and buy them too. I don't know how quickly you can get a brand new replacement amplifier. It might be more realistic to just replace those. But yes, I agree. I would be upset too if I only had a center cluster and it's a big room. You're not going to have good coverage there. So remember, every speaker has a sweet spot. And if they're line arrays, they're all different. So yes, I would get those amps replaced and find a solution quick.
Alex?
And if there's something that is endemic, like it's something that has been a problem at the location before, always bring those things up like, hey, we don't have these amplifiers. They're not going to, this is going to be problematic. You want to lay little stakes in the ground that state like this is problematic. You don't want to step over it. I don't know whether they just failed or whether you knew that they were failed, but it's easy for someone to overlook them. What makes you look, if you see problems, you don't want to be like everything's a problem. But when you see problems, if you point them out and saying, hey, this is something we probably should address, when it happens, it gives you more of an opportunity to make change. And it also has, people see that you're paying attention to all these other things that can happen. If it just happened, trying to find somebody to bring something in quickly would be the answer. There's not a lot of, I don't think there's a lot of other options.
Next question.
Jason Bache in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and here on the panel, a new Apple immersive video is out, this time featuring Metallica live in Mexico City. For those who have seen it, what are your thoughts?
Jason?
Alex, I am so glad you told me about this. I thought it was going to be out much later than it was. Okay, so for those who haven't seen it, it's kind of a mix between 3 live concert tracks and this kind of black and white, silver-toned documentary. And I think like they're getting better. It's not, it's still not quite there. There are repeated pushes where they will do something strange, go to black and white, and then the audience like gets their hand way too close to you. Like that was the recurring thing that just kind of drove me nuts throughout this. It's like, come on, didn't we learn from like, the throw a ball into the audience? I thought the production was amazing and, of course, immediately started looking out for the cameras, which they didn't even try to hide. And that was fantastic. It was raining during this show in Mexico City, and they were more covered than I think that they had intended for them to be. All in, I thought it was well executed. I would have changed some shots. And I would have made 2 different things. One would be concert, and the other would be, the artsy kind of, personal statements in silver tone. But they're getting better, that's for sure.
Alex?
I think it's probably the best concert experience I've had with video. It really is the kind of the top of the line. That said, a lot of what Jason pointed out, I thought that there's a drum shot of Lars that is a little too close. I would have backed up about 2 feet. Very much did not like the crowd shots. I just want to pay attention to the concert. Like I don't care about the crowd. So showing a bunch of stuff in the crowd doesn't mean anything to me. The only shots with crowd shots that I thought were particularly good were they have the side shot where the artist is singing and the arms are going out in the front of the stage, and in 3D that looks great. So that worked out well. Obviously, some of the stuff that's right as they're singing coming right down to them, I think was pretty impressive. There's a solo in Enter the Sandman, and they never cut to the guitar. I know there's a story behind that.
Drove me nuts.
There's a story there somewhere. I think it was. My guess is I watched it a couple times to analyze it. It wasn't very long. This concert was like 20 minutes long. I mean, I'm sure the concert was longer, but they showed us 20 minutes. But there's all these balls bouncing. I think they got in the way of the wire cams. So I think that they couldn't get the wire cam down there, because right where, if you look at what's happening, right where they would have put those cameras, there are bouncing, like 4 or 5 bouncing balls, and they probably had to pull the wire cam up. Definitely not how they designed it. What's really interesting, Metallica has been doing, like, what can we do that's brand new first for now 30 years, and so, and I've worked on a couple of those shows, and they're just always interested in making sure that they stay relevant and stay, they're not producing a lot of new stuff, but they can still fill a stadium, and they know what to do with it, and they make it a great show. And Mexico City is a great place to record. A lot of people record in Mexico City because the fans are amazing. Like, that's why if you want fans to be out of control and just having a great time and everything else, Mexico City is a great place to shoot.
Jason?
And as stage design goes, I'm glad Alex brought that up. This is one of the better stage designs I have ever seen, full stop. It was in the middle of football, soccer stadium, and it was basically, kind of a donut. And then they had risers going up, and go ahead.
And they've had that stage design for a couple of years now. I mean, this is good. Yeah, it's a really, they've kind of settled into it, and they've got these huge video pillars that they've kind of put out in the stage, and it's a very well-designed stage. It allows them to really give all of the audience, they can put, basically from a practical perspective, they have a lot less seat kills, and they're really actually, other than drumming, the drummer position, everybody's moving around all the time, so it really gives them the ability to give the entire audience more of an experience. And so that, I think, has worked fairly well for them. I did see this also in Fathom. So I went to a theater, and watched this in Fathom, and it was not the same as what I saw on the Vision Pro. One of the interesting things that is in a handful of the shots, a lot of those close-ups you were talking about, which I thought were way too close. What I did like was they used a much softer edge mat than I've seen before, where it kind of fades into the black behind you instead of a hard edge. And I'm going to use that. I was like, that's a much better idea.
And the strobing, however they got the frame rate to nail the strobe lights, were just first time I've ever seen that done correctly.
That's good.
I'm super excited. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't had time to kind of noodle around in there, but I am a huge fan of big stadium shows. I've seen U2 at a stadium, U2 at the Sphere. I've seen Billy Joel a ton of times, Taylor Swift Eras Tour, like all the big shows. I love a big rock and roll show. I'm so excited to see what does the immersive video take on it? What is the Vision Pro's version of this experience that I love so much in person that you guys have sold me?
I have to say that I don't like big shows. I enjoyed this one. They used to rehearse in the old stage where some of you have seen us do concert tests. Metallica used to rehearse in that stage. And I would love to bring them to that stage and have them do something more acoustic in Vision Pro. I think that would be the next thing, after that, where you're just sitting there enjoying it. I'm much more interested in a kind of a really amazingly designed tiny desk. When I say tiny desk, 50 by 50 foot space that gives you a 20-foot drop off from the camera to the
Metallica tiny desk,
Well, I mean, for artists in general. So we'll see.
Yeah, you're at this really interesting intersection of you want to take somebody that's in one of these immersive experiences and put them into the best seat in the house at a concert experience that exists in the real world. The real power is, I think, what Alex is onto, and that's putting someone in a position that you could never buy your way into. Like there's no way that you could have that intimate acoustic experience and feel that connection with artists. Super powerful stuff. Your questions and votes drive the show, so remember, use Makana to chat. You can ask questions. You can vote on the questions. If you don't have access, just go to officehours.global/join. That'll give you links for how to get into Makana, get into Discord, all the good stuff. Next question.
Hi, Cochran in Seattle, USA. What are the pros and cons of Vectar versus Carbonite code versus vMix?
Go ahead, Jonas.
So I would say it's important to keep in mind what different type of switcher we're talking about. This Vectar comes from a TriCaster, and Carbonite code comes from the Carbonite ROS video model. And then vMix is the vMix that you know everywhere. There's not a special cloud version, even though like you don't have decklink cards in the cloud. That's the main difference. If you compare Carbonite code and this Vectar, you will notice that they have a lot of things in common, but they really feel native to the operator that has spent the last 5 years on a TriCaster. They will be able to just get started on this Vectar immediately. What I'll say is this Vectar feels a bit more software. Like both of them are software switches, but from the concepts, this Vectar is closer to a software switcher. They have all the concepts of a hardware switcher, but then they go above. Like, for example, right now to change settings of an input, you click into the multi-view and change settings there, which that might not be super apparent to an operator that is normally working on like a hardware-only platform like the Carbonites. That being said, Carbonite code, if you have an experienced TD that has cut on any ROS switcher, especially if it is on any of the Carbonite Black, Ultras, any of that, they will feel right at home. And that is one of the advantages why we're using Carbonite code in the cloud right now, is you can use a TD panel, which is the touch drive panel. That one is quite expensive, but also quite good. And then you can also use the older Carbonite Black panels. So we have 2 Carbonite Black panels that we use to control our Carbonite code. But one of the big advantages with Carbonite code is the multi-operator workflow. While so what you do is, and I actually can show you how Carbonite code looks in the cloud, which is interesting. So this is Carbonite code. And some of you might say now, Jonas, that's Windows. Where is the switcher? And that is one of the things that I like about it. When I first installed it, I wasn't even aware it's running. Because what it is, if we go in here, you have services. So they have the service infrastructure, and it's just in the background. And to see anything, what I would do is I would open up Studio Monitor. And now I would see, if I booted my NDI Discovery server, I would be able to see all of my outputs there. So the outputs aren't tied to any screen shares, screen records, any of that. But also this allows you to use ROS dashboard, and multiple operators can use it. So for example, Tucker in the US can use it, our TD can use it, I can use it on another instance. So it really is easier to use multi-operator workflows. Vectar has something similar where they have a lot of the functions are available through the web interface, but there are some that aren't. And for those, then you still need to like coordinate access to the instance. That's one key differentiator. That being said, Carbonite code at this point in time doesn't have the website, and it does less. Like it is more just a switcher right now, versus like a TriCaster that's a fully integrated production system with the latest version. Vectar will get Zoom integration, HTML inputs, graphics, like playouts, all of that. The Carbonite is much more like what you would get if you put a Carbonite rack switcher and put it in the cloud. I know that that's something that they're working on, but it required us to build around it a bit more. But at the same point, now you have a lot more setup there that if like your switcher fails, now I can take my encoder and point it to the playout directly, and I can go around it. Like I have less failure if that one system fails. And I think vMix kind of fits in if you want to build more flexible things. A lot of the things you can do with those two, you can also do with vMix. But one of the issues we've noticed is that a lot of people tend to overbuild their vMix, especially in the cloud, where your CPU clock is a good bit lower than what you would expect from a CPU that you have on site. It's easy to like build a way too large vMix profile, upload it to the cloud, and it doesn't work. And especially when you then have multiple operators, like let's say you have a 24/7 hour show and you need to rotate through operators, that's where we find that tool like Vectar and Carbonite code that are more rigid in their operator experience are more helpful. And like that's kind of one of the things that with code I like is it's less flexible than vMix because it doesn't let you build yourself into like a corner as easily. Like it has more of the traditional things of like here's like 3 MEs. Vectar has 8 MEs and a preview, so that's one difference. But also both of them have MEs. vMix will give you, I think, 100 MEs technically, but we all know that if you use 100 MEs, you're barely producing any frames. So like that's kind of the difference in like vMix allows you more, but you can build a much more with that. So that's where something like Carbonite code might feel more restrictive, but in the end help you produce a better product by giving you like sane guardrails, which is like one of these concepts in software production we've talked a lot about is like stop giving us everything. Just give us things that are safe, that I can give to an operator that they can't add like 20 MEs because they feel like it. That will bring down the whole production.
Next question.
This one's from Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York. With all the movement in the small switcher market, what does the panel want to see from Blackmagic Design's next update to the Atem Mini line?
Jonas.
I want them to take the HTTP API that they are starting to implement and take that fully through and open the Atem up that way. We're already seeing the Atem setup being HTTP based and web interface based. So if you look at the trajectory, they will get there, I think. But that is the thing that I'm most excited about next. I would also love for them to like fix the TCP/IP stack on the encoders, where they're known to, in not ideal conditions, sometimes they'll joke themselves by lowering the bit rate that they can send from the encoder. So that is a known issue. But yeah, if you look at how they've done APIs in the past, it really makes you excited about how they will probably do it for the Atem. But I don't know what many more features I need. Like, I would much rather them not add too much weird, whimsical things that might work and just stay in the lane, make sure that the things that they do are working. I really enjoy that we now can get the multi-view out of a webcam. That is a great improvement. Just keep slowly digging at those things and give us more API hooks.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd love to see more access to the switcher. And right now, Atem Tao is the only person who's figured out most of the things that need to be done. So Mixeffect Pro but that was a hack. It's not really, utilizing what Blackmagic, because we couldn't do that. He couldn't build Mixeffect Pro if we were just using the API, and so the API needs to be wider and deeper than what it is right now. I would love to see at least the Pro versions. If they put Pro on it or Extreme on it, I really think it should have mini XLR inputs. So, it's a Pro. Like, let's stop doing this unbalanced, headphone jack shenanigans, on the switcher. So having like real audio inputs would make a big difference. I would love to see them simplify the extreme in all of these. I mean, there are 2/3 of the buttons that I've never pushed on purpose on my thing. That's a fail. I get why they wanted to put all that stuff, and then they had a bunch of space, but I don't know. I mean, I'd rather have a bunch of the buttons be bigger and have less of them. I just don't need that kind of control on the hardware switcher. I would, because things like macros, I would like to have a lot more of. like macros are important. My volume on my audio inputs that aren't very good, not important. So I think that's the issue, is that they just don't need some priority to the interface there. I would love to see I think that there's one of three options. I really want to solve the problem that I love what Mimo Live does with their interface. And we talked about it yesterday, of being able to build these custom interfaces that allow us to abstract the complexity of the show, especially ones that you do regularly, away from the process. And I would love to see either Atem do that for the ATEM switchers. I would love to see Blackmagic just do it themselves if Atem's not going to do it. And I'd love Oliver to think about doing it, working with Atem, or doing something that did those types of things. And all three, I've told all three of them that. Trying to get somebody to do, basically allow me to just draw boxes onto interfaces and be able to tie into the switchers would be. I gotta say, it's pretty life-changing when you get the design really tuned up. But the key is that it can't be something that's geeky. It just has to be something that, as a TD, I can open and just kind of pull stuff around. That's what Oliver does really well. And I just want to be able to pull those buttons around and lay them out the way I want to lay them out without having to do a lot. All the operations are all built into it. That would probably make the biggest difference. The last thing is that after testing a bunch of the 2110 stuff from Blackmagic, all I want is 2110. Like the router works incredibly well. The converters are working great, and so I think that's what's coming. I think the router was a big pig in the pipe, so to speak, in the sense that it was holding the everything back. And now that router's out, I expect us to see a larger router. I expect to see more cameras with 2110. I expect to see more switchers. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a big year for 2110 for Blackmagic, because 48 in and 48 out off of a little 1U rack mountable router is impressive. And it's with just Ethernet cables. I've been waiting for something to come around. NDI has never been stable enough. I constantly see people still telling me it's great, but then I see a pink and green screen every once in a while, and I go, every time I see that resets the day for another year for me. Like, I'm just like, it's, and so I'm excited to be using Ethernet.
Hosmer?
Yeah, I've got two ATEM Extremes HDMI and original ATEM Mini Pro. I wish sometimes on the Extremes I had an additional video out. That's just me. I need that. And the other thing is, from an aesthetics point of view, I wish they supported rounded corners in the super sources, because they got these sharp edges, which Mixeffect cannot do anything about it. It's totally dependent on the ATEM. And I agree with Alex about the audio. I think anything I put through the ATEM, there's always going to be a sync issue. I wish I could do that directly through the ATEM.
Alexander?
I have a long list, but let me just start with what Jonas said. I do agree the encoder/networking stack needs to be rebuilt. It's just not something I can rely on. I don't know why Blackmagic only... First of all, we need more controls. The fact that it's variable bit rate and you have no ability to set constant bit rate on the encoding is weird, because YouTube and a lot of other streaming services really ask you to have constant bit rate. They don't like the variable bit rate. Also, I think there's some work that's needed on the ISO record stuff, and definitely balanced audio in. Also, it would be nice to have a balanced audio output as well. And also on the build quality side of things, I don't think Blackmagic will ever change the materials, because ultimately they don't want their switches to be at the same cost that Roland does. But I will just show you one example here. So you can see that this Roland V1 HD Plus is a little bit taller. So they put full-sized balanced XLR jacks for the audio. And also they put 1/4-inch TRS balanced audio outputs. Now that's actually really nice if you want to hook up powered studio monitors to monitor your audio, that instead of just using a small 3.5 millimeter jack for your headphones. That is actually really nice. And then one other thing, and again, I don't think they'd ever do it because the chassis is made out of plastic, but you'll notice that this Roland, the chassis is made out of metal. And one thing that they did to minimize these HDMI connectors from breaking from constant insertion and removal is that they've actually put bolts through the metal of the chassis and there's actually a metal plate inside. So yes, these are attached to a printed circuit board, but they have the added strain relief of this bolt going through the chassis, through a metal plate, which really makes these connectors incredibly rigid. That's kind of my dream. I don't think they'd ever do it because, again, it would increase cost.
Got 2 new evening shows for you to watch live or later. We've got Extra Hours on Mondays at 6, and we've had for a while now the Rundown as well on Thursdays at 6. Every now and again, you'll also see us doing an Office Hours special show, so be on the lookout for those. Those are on Tuesdays, also 6 Pacific. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin, are there any caveats using an M1 Mac Mini with latest OBS and an Ultrastudio HD Mini to send key fill to an ATEM? The only source in OBS would be H2R browser.
Go ahead, Jonas.
So I will assume that you already went through the little, I like to call it the permission ballet. That is like making sure you have all the permissions there and the DEC card is actually allowed to function within the OS. The other thing, and I will go here. If you have OBS, you're going to add a browser source, make sure that the background is transparent. So in HDR graphics, you would want to do that. If you ever want to play audio, make sure you check this. And then the other important thing is you need to change its internal color format. So you want to change it to BGRA so you can actually have alpha in there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to Tools, DEC Output, and in here, I have an Ultrastudio with me, but I didn't get to power it on in time. But you would select your device, you would select your mode. And then what's important to know about the keyer, there's 2 ways those Ultrastudios can function. It's external keyer, which that is what you want, that's key fill, and then there's internal keyer. With an internal keyer, what's going to happen is it's going to take the input, apply what you're sending on top of it, and send it out the output. The reason why I'm mentioning that is, especially if you are in a HDMI-based workflow, it makes more sense often to apply this as an actual downstream keyer by converting HDMI to SDI and then taking it to the encoder that way. Because in that case, you're able to make sure that it keeps in sync. One of the issues we see that a lot of people think, oh, I'll just use an Ultrastudio and then I'll use 2 SDI to HDMI converters, and then they're confused why like transparency looks a little bit off. That is because they are not in sync. That being said, if you have an SDI-based workflow, this is a great time to actually get yourself a little sync clock and make sure that you jam sync into both the DEC card or the Ultrastudio in this case and your switcher, just to be sure that you keep those in sync. Other than that, that works fine. I personally wouldn't use a Mac for that. Like I really like, I have an MS01 that I use for that with a built-in DEC card with Casper CG. But yeah, if you have to use it on Mac, then that is an okay solution. Otherwise, you can also use on Air Tools. I always forgot their name. They have like a 800 to like 1,300-ish piece of software that takes browser sources and outputs them over DEC cards and Ultrastudios as well. So that might also be an option. But at that point, I would spend that money, buy myself an MS01 and put a deck link card in it and have a really nice contained space for that.
Alex?
Yeah, another option if you're going down an SDI route as well is this is on the air web link from Softron.tv, and it's designed to do exactly what you're doing. That's all it does is to take your web links, including key fill, and output them via an SDI signal. I've been testing it, and it works really well.
Next question.
Kyle Nesta in Plymouth is asking, looking to move to Zoom for remote contribution. Can you talk through a basic ZoomISO pipeline? Any best practices for diversifying across multiple ZoomISO machines?
Go ahead, Jonas.
If you want to use ZoomISO, keep in mind that you are bound to a macOS-based workflow. And then you have to think about how do you want to get those feeds from ZoomISO into your production system. There is two things to keep in mind. You have audio and video. ZoomISO has built-in support for NDI, Dante, decklink cards. It also can send out SRT, but since it sounds like you're wanting to have this on site, probably SRT doesn't play too much of a role. What I would set up is that you have like 4 channels of remote callers, and then you set up the audio for those 4 channels goes out here. You can send that with the SDI, or you can send it out through an audio device or through Dante. And then you can do that as well. One thing to keep in mind with ZoomISO is it really gains a lot from being driven from a third-party interface. So, for example, Companion, Universe Control, or another TouchOSC, another tool that can send information to it. That makes it easy for you to pin people, refresh them, and all of that. One thing to always keep in mind is that people forget is how do you get screen captures out? And then if you are more in a Windows-based workflow and you don't need any of like the leading edge features that ZoomISO has, like being able to pull out captioning feeds and all of that, I would also look at Zoom Room's custom AV that is right now in open beta that will soon also be publicly available for the general public. It's really great because you have a simple controller as well for that. And I'll put a tiny plug in here. If you then also think about how am I going to talk back to those people, that's where we build space comms that allows you to send either a link to your participants or invite them to use a Zoom app. And then you have isolated talkbacks to each of those different people. That being said, I would make sure that you use at least 2 ZoomISOs and use a breakout workflow where you bring everybody to the main meeting, and then you have 2 stages. That way you can flip, you can test them, you can talk back to them, and then from then on bring them live to air without having to wrangle them while the show is live.
Alex?
Yeah, everything that Jonas said. I'll add a couple of things. What I would say is, if you're using ZoomISO, my recommendation would be Mac Minis, the new M4s. You could use pretty much the base unit, and it'll work fine. Put in a Softron with a quad card. That's going to give you 8 outputs, but only use 4. So kind of build your system around some overcapacity. The M4 with a Softron and a quad card will absolutely put out 8. But if you run them, if you design them around 4 contributors, you can always scale up as needed. I would still plug all 8 in and test it against 8 going into a larger router. Is how I would approach that problem. Audio, typically we are pulling Dante. I mean, that's the most commonplace way that we would pull audio out of there. And then all the stuff that Jonas said, a lot of times what we do is we have, with a lot of the shows that we have, the main one is just the lobby. So people come in and immediately are jetted away to to another room. That's kind of the holding room. That goes into, we one by one bring them into hair and makeup, HMU, and then we drop them into a green room here. And then oftentimes if we have multiple, let's say we're doing multiple ones, if we've got like 3 or 4 groups of 5 that we're jumping from, we'll give each one of them their own room that they can all talk to. And that's a great way to kind of keep everybody. That's the power of using Zoom for this kind of thing, is that you use that breakout architecture, something that a lot of us learned from Grant. So, we affectionately call that the Emerald City protocol internally, because it's kind of like that Emerald City where you go from one station to another. So, and we found that to be very effective at managing participants.
You can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. It's fast and easy. Nothing to sign up for, nothing to log into. Just go to askofficehours.global. Give us your name, give us your question. We'll work it in over the next few shows. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. According to this South by Southwest speaker, you don't have to die. Does that affect your professional media business plan?
Go ahead, Alex.
You don't have to die, but I'm pretty sure he will in the next 50 years. Like in 50 or 60 years. I mean, this is, silly. It's actually not bad content about health and ways to live better, but I think that the whole don't have to die thing is a little over the top.
Next question.
Osmont Gajar in Cape Town, and here on the panel is asking, my production setup is HDMI-based, cameras, switchers, etc., but I have 5 HDMI splitter in my setup, looking at a 16x16 HDMI Matrix switch. Thoughts?
Envy. My thoughts are envy. Go ahead, Alex.
When you start to get to 16x16 HDMI, start thinking about SDI. Even if you're converting some of the stuff that you have there, I would say that I have an 8x8 and I'm at the outer edge. Like I'm moving back to SDI soon. I'm just waiting to do some redesign on my office. But as I do that redesign, I'm going to move back to SDI because I just need too many inputs and outputs and I just have run out of where HDMI was designed to go. It's not designed to be a production. It's a consumer delivery format, not a production format. And we've taken it about as far. I've taken mine as far as I can take it. So the issue you have is that the 16x16s are going to be about $3,000, $4,000 once you get to those matrices. The 20x20 router from Blackmagic is $2,400. So you're now that router is there. Even with buying the converters, you start to get pretty close to the same price as those HDMI switchers. If you get the bidirectional ones, you're starting to get very close to the same thing, and it's going to be much more performant than what you're going to get with those. And so I would recommend thinking hard as you start to really turn into, like, I use HDMI at home. And I've taken it about as far as it can go as a home thing. I don't use HDMI in paid productions. I switch over to SDI pretty quickly, and my next step will not be it will go from SDI to 2110. But I'm still using SDI for it. There's so many elements of quirkiness in HDMI that I wouldn't. If I started to scale to a point where I start asking for 16x16 routers, I would probably think about SDI or 2110.
Jonas?
At that scale, you really need to be aware of managing your edits for HDMI. Because with your splitters, it's relatively easy. It just copies the edit of the firm, depending on how the splitter works. It just copies the format of one display to another one, which might work fine if you have the same type of displays. But you really need to think about, hey, do I have ATEMs in my production who are known to do weird things with the edit to get a lot of things working? I don't know who remembers when they started, where we all had that, well, now suddenly this monitor works and this monitor didn't used to work. They did a bunch of really interesting things to make sure that it works with the most amount of screens and all that possible. You probably want to stay in 60 FPS at least with your whole workflow, and then down convert to 30 somewhere closer to where you deliver, just because most monitors, if you're in an HDMI world, what you look for is the hertz. So most of them don't support 30 hertz, they only support 60 hertz and up. And the other thing to keep in mind is just move it all to the cloud and use, then you don't have to deal with HDMI at all.
Osmog?
Yeah, I mean, the studio and infrastructure we have, the analogy is we built a hotel and we're just waiting for occupancy. So I'm kind of loath to make more investment moving from HDMI to SDI. I know I have to cross that bridge. And the only reason why we have this dilemma is I have a confidence monitor for my TD on every monitor that's sitting in the studio, because they haven't figured out how to manage with multi-view. So whatever the talent sees on a prompter, I have a monitor for that on the TD side. So that's really the reason why I run into this problem. If I'm cutting the show, I don't really need that kind of level of splitters. But I went to a show today where Blackmagic was also there. And Alex, by the way, I told him that, have you seen this new 30K camera? And they looked surprised. I said, you should watch NAB coverage on office hours next. So anyway, so they also suggested the Blackmagic switch, video switcher.
Alex?
Yeah, and it's probably I definitely wouldn't upgrade to anything before NAB. So I would definitely watch whatever's going to happen next. Typically, Blackmagic will release their they're gonna release the week before NAB. So we expect to see a video there on a Wednesday or a Thursday, typically before NAB, to let everybody know what's coming out. Again, I expect to see, if I was in HDMI right now, I would wait for NAB to see if there's a lot of release of NDI, or not NDI, but 2110 tools. I probably, that's also part of why my studio is I'm kind of waiting for NAB's announcements to see whether I think I can move my whole studio to 2110 or whether I need to hang out for a little longer on SDI.
And if when you get to the other side of this limbo of waiting, if you feel like SDI is your answer, it's the SDI Extreme is also going to give you your extra outputs that you asked for in the earlier question. So that's a little bonus. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. How might a downtown D.C.-based federal media organization connect to network TV outlets via the switch?
Alex?
There's a couple different ways to connect to the switch from downtown. So I don't know whether my guess is that you're somewhere between K and M Street or K and N Street, between 17th and 20th or 21st. So if you're in that box, you're not very close. You're not very far away from the switch node. The switch node is at 20th and M. And so it's your run. The reason that that's important is that the run matters as far as cost goes. Whether you're paying for what we call ICOD or not, which you won't have to pay for if you're in that area, pretty much most of DC. The way to get most federal agencies are connected to the switch via DCI. That's diversified communications. They're also in 20th and M, and that also gives you access to to Eurovision, the inputs and outputs of the United States in and out of Europe. Also goes into 20th and M. So the BBC is in 20th and M as well. They're up on the 5th floor. And I think there's NEP is also there as well. They do REMI from there. So there's a lot of stuff going in and out. There's 26 dishes on the roof. There is an old AVOC network that is connected. I don't know if they're pulling that down, if Verizon's pulling that down, but that is one way that government agencies like NASA have connected to that building specifically, and how we've connected things like the space station to the switch and so on and so forth. But diversified communications would be the first one. If you want to do some kind of service, they have a lot of microwave that's available throughout the city. What you can do is approach the switch directly, and you can reach out to me in Discord. I can put you in touch with someone there. We work with them daily. But you can reach out to them and have them actually install a leased line into your organization. That's the best way to do it. And so then what will happen is that you'll have a leased line that is going directly into your studio. That's going to allow you to be on the switch. And from then, it's just a matter of scheduling. And what that does is it does a couple things. One is any network, any major network in the United States and most major networks around the world can simply schedule a connection. So this is basically they hub into Europe. The switch hubs through Europe through BT Tower, but then again, they can use the Eurovision to get to the continent. And so you can basically connect there. And it's going to be very low latency. You can tell when people are using the switch or not using the switch by how fast the guest responds to the broadcaster. And because if it's instant or almost instant, it's the switch. If it's not, it's some cheaper version of things. And so the other thing that's interesting is that the networks, if you come in over Zoom or over Skype or over for the next month or other things like that, they assume that your audio pipeline is not very strong. And so what they do is they put you through a different, much worse audio pipeline that makes you sound really kind of contained in there, because they're just trying to fix all the problems that they assume that you're going to have from home. So you want to be able to, we're trying to work with a lot of them to try to build a tier that isn't that way for Zoom and so on and so forth. But right now that's the case. If you come in over the switch, they assume you're a studio and they don't do as much work to your audio or video. So you're gonna look and sound much better coming in from there if you're going to do it all the time and you want to connect to TV outlets. The other thing that you'll have access to is the ability to go on to what's called the press pool. So for about $500 per city, you can drop it into the press pool, which means all the press can get whatever you're doing for free for them. So basically if you drop press pool to LA, New York, DC, those are the big ones. You basically mean that any press organization can just grab onto your signal without a direct link. And they can all get it, and they don't have to pay the ICOD fees to get it to where they are. And it's a great way to magnify your exposure for a given project.
We've got some weekend shows for you as well. There are live-only shows, members only. I think we should get jackets. But Saturday and Sunday, we do live on Makana. Saturday's a Q&A. Sunday's more of an introspective show, so that's where you can ask questions about office hours, philosophical stuff, about the industry, about the show. It's a really fun time. We chew on things a little bit longer. Highly recommend it. If you're not in Makana, officehours.global/join so you can see us on the weekends. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I want to purchase a Qlab license for vMix, X32, and PTZ control. I've never used Qlab before, so what are some good tips and tricks to learning Qlab?
Alex, we actually have quite a few folks in office hours that know Qlab. So one thing that I would recommend is to get it and then ask questions in our Qlab forum. Folks like Tlaloc and others have done very, very complex things in Qlab and will most likely answer those questions. I think that they do have some training resources on their site. There are some YouTube channels that are available as well. I would kick through some of those, but the most important thing is figure out what you're trying to do with it, try to do it, and then jump up either on their forum or our Discord and ask more questions. And I think you'll get to the other side. We're thinking about classes right now, and Qlab is one of the ones that's on the class. I was talking to Tlaloc yesterday about DMX because we get a lot of questions about DMX. I was like, we should do a DMX class. Just do here's what to buy. Here are the 4 lights to buy, and here's a little controller, and here's a ArtNet, and we'll spend a Saturday doing a class. So we're talking about that. Qlab is on that list as well.
Welcome to a whole new universe. I can see exactly. It's coming. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany. Billy Gibbons, one of the coolest cats on the planet, puts an iPad below the strings of his guitar to make his musical performance visually even more appealing. Thoughts?
Alex?
I just love when artists start to think outside the box when it comes to these things. And so I only got to see a little bit of it, but it's pretty cool. He's always, they're always trying to stretch that out. So I do enjoy also looking at when artists start to use some of these as instruments themselves, and there's a lot of room to grow there.
Next question.
This is a question from me. Is it cheaper to build your own Raspberry Pi versus buying pre-built?
Jonas?
It depends. In the heights of COVID, where you couldn't get anything, it often was still cheaper because you could just get it pre-built. That being said, it is so simple. I happen to have a couple cases to show that you could put it in, because depending on your workflow, there's so many different ways to case your Pi. This is the desk Pi. The cool thing is at the back, it brings out 2 full-size HDMIs, which that is really, really neat. There's small adapters like this that are also full-size HDMI that you can plug in and then 3D print your own casing. There's the default Raspberry Pi case that we've had for years. This one is so old you'll see the dust on it. And then you can get more adventurous, and this is one of my latest biases. So the Raspberry Pi also has a kind of development or embedding board called the compute module. What you can buy is this little Raspberry Pi cube. You put the housing off, and then you put the Raspberry Pi CM4 compute module in here, and then look at this tiny cute machine that you could use for playout or like companion or anything like that. It also comes with full size HDMIs. I will say that's the one thing I would say it makes a lot of sense to get a case that has full size HDMI out. You'll save a lot of money by doing it that way instead of I have a full drawer full of micro HDMI to HDMI adapters, because you can throw them away after you traveled with them like 1 or 2 weeks. Yeah, but there's a lot of different versions. Think about what exactly you need. There's also aluminum builds, but yeah, I would say it might be cheaper because you don't need a case to buy a pre-built one. But I would say spend an hour or 2 setting it all up yourself, and you'll be much happier and have a much better product for you.
Alexander?
I like that first case the first one you showed, the desktop Pi one. But Jonas, do you know, does anyone make a version of that circuit board instead of HDMI out with SDI out? Is that a possibility? Because that would be incredible if they could.
No, not currently that I'm aware of. There's like some weirdness with SDI output boards, but no, I would love for that to exist, but no.
Next question.
Tommy Shanson, St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. Is Mixeffect worth getting for use on the regular, not extremes, ATEM?
Jason?
Oh, 100% yes. So I don't think they ever made an ATEM that didn't at least have one upstream keyer. So I'll let you be the judge. Here we go. So single one stream keyer. And to be able to do this in real time easily, and then, just set point B, and then to be able to run between the two is pretty awesome. And I did that while talking. So that is the easiest, most straight up thing. First thing I learned really to use Mixeffect for, and I'll leave the rest to Alex.
Alex?
Yeah, I've done events with an ATEM 8K in front of 60,000 people, 60,000 viewers, and all I was tapping on was the iPad. Like just do it, and it was just tapping between scenes in Mixeffect Pro. It felt silly. Like I've got a 2ME full-on board sitting in front, or 4ME, I'm sorry, full-on board sitting in front of me, and I have this little iPad that I'm doing the whole show in. It is. I don't know why you'd buy an ATEM switcher without having Mixeffect Pro. That's how good it is. Like, it's just it revolutionizes how you use the product. So especially if you have any kind of super sources, it's going to make a huge difference.
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to the channel, of course, but you can also volunteer. We've got volunteer opportunities both during the show and outside of show hours, so find out about that at officehours.global/volunteer. And finally, you can donate. We're a nonprofit, so just go to officehours.global/donate, and we appreciate everybody's contributions. Next question.
Hi, Cochran in Seattle, USA. Zoom slowly rolling out single-seat business accounts with opportunity for 1080p. Do you see 1 to 250 users or still 10 to 250 on the pricing page?
Alex Knight. Alex Knight.
In Canada for the last few months, I have seen this. And in fact, I finally signed up. This was the real impediment because it was too much money because I didn't need 10 licenses. So in Canada for the last, I think since October, we've been able to get, and I will show you here, this is what I see on the page, business Zoom workplace account, $24.99 a month in Canadian dollars there per user, and it says 1 to 250. And as soon as I submitted a ticket, within 24 hours, I had 1080p enabled on my Zoom account, and I only pay $25 a month.
Alex?
I think I still can't go below 10, so I think it's still rolling out. So it depends on at least our 090 account. We have 10, but we can't go below that.
And Jason?
Yeah, I think once you have it, you're locked into it. And for those of us who were very generously given this, way back when, this is just wonderful. I love that they're still expanding it out.
I still see the 10 minimum for the business license. However, I have a single Zoom Workplace license or a business, but it's not a business account, I suppose, but it is a Zoom Sessions. Originally, when Zoom Sessions came out, there was a little bit of confusion over whether you could get 1080 or not with a single account. And I even had to support ticket back and forth with Zoom, and they said, no, sorry, you can't do 1080. In the last couple weeks, though, somebody waved the magic wand, and I have 1080 now. So maybe that's happening in Sessions. If that's not an official thing, I appreciate it. Next question.
From the QR code, Marielle Jusha Mieron Wablo is asking, what are NVT connections and what are the best hints for using them?
Alex?
NVT connections they're a way to use, I believe, coax to distribute video or not coax, but Ethernet to distribute, or Ethernet cable to distribute video. I've never seen anyone use it in production. So there's not really ways to use it. I would not. I mean, it's a cheap way to kind of move things around, but it's really for people who are trying to not spend any money on anything. So I wouldn't use those.
Jonas?
It seems to be a standard for serial. So like that's where you could put SDI signals on it. But yeah, that looks like if you need to search for it more than a couple minutes on Google, I probably wouldn't rely on that standard.
Danger. Next question.
Asmat Gajar in Cape Town. Have 2 cages for SmallRig for my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pros. What else do you have for your setup from SmallRig?
Jason?
Of course I'll spend your money. The one that I'm talking into right now, I also have Rails, which I find to be very, very, very convenient, especially if you want to do something like this and put a teleprompter in front of it. I also have batteries and, a V-mount way to clip the batteries on. And then I've got another set of Rails up on the top so that I can play around with the lenses without having to reach the lenses. It's not mounted right now, but I have that ability once it's nicely on top. And then I've got a little air tag just right on top. You can actually put an air tag directly onto the cage. Another nice little lanyap.
Alex?
I don't have a lot of stuff I can show quickly because it's in my garage because I have a workspace that's just pretty much the entire SmallRig catalog that's there. So I've got lots of little arms. So think about the Rosetta connections for the arms. There's a couple different kinds. Get the more expensive ones that have what you want is for them to roll. I don't know if I might have that laying around here. You want it to you want to be able to turn it without having to turn the entire arm. And those are the Rosetta mounts that are there. So think about those. And a lot of them, the newer ones are more expensive, but much more robust than the older arms. I use their batteries, their battery mounts, their rails. I print things for their rails. So I print like the things that hold. So we kind of know how to print a lot of the holders. Like the kit that I'm using in NAB has a 12G mount on it, a 12G and better. And we've already printed something that just slides onto the rails to make that actually work. So pretty much, I think that I kind of got into it. Tom Ferguson's fault by starting with a phone rig, and it just happened to be I got the SmallRig phone rig. If I had bought the one of the other ones, I probably would have built the system around it. The problem you get into is if you start mixing and matching systems, the distances between the quarter 20 mounts sometimes are not exactly the same. So it's easier to stay inside the system. And as a result, I have thousands of dollars worth of SmallRig mounts.
Hosmuth?
Yeah, besides the cage, I have the clamp that holds the HDMI cable in the Blackmagic camera and also holds the Thunderbolt cable. But I saw them at the same show where I met Blackmagic today. And I was quite surprised. They had tripods and lights included in the SmallRig portfolio. And then, like Alex says, stands that can give you, to keep a camera overhead onto your desk. So very interesting organization in terms of how they're expanding their portfolio of add-ons.
One thing that I really, really like from SmallRig is they have HDMI cables that are the closest thing that I've found to the old HDMI cables that Apple used to make, that they're the high quality HDMI cables, but they're very, very slim line, which I'm a big fan of. I was just looking in my Amazon history, and it seems like, every quarter I'll order, or every month I'll order 4 or 5 of them and just put them in places. And then besides the cages, I have a bunch of small tripods and the desk mounted poles that have the little quarter 20 in the top, which I like a lot not for a camera, because I don't like the shake, but I do like to have it as an option to put a light or a witness cam or something like that. Last thing that I really, really like about SmallRig is that little, and you may have mentioned this, but that little bit that screws onto the cage that separates the HDMI connection. So instead of plugging directly into the camera, you're plugging into that little $10 connector. You'd much rather break that than your camera. Alex?
A couple things. I've got lots of cheese plates. So these are the little cheese plates. They're like little things. This is they also have these larger clamps that I use. This is another round. They have these little quick releases that you can screw in so you can snap it in. Don't. I'm using this one, but they're not good. They're a little loose. Really what you want to think about is NATO. You want to get used to NATO mounts. NATO mounts are really good. SmallRig makes this little screwdriver. You got to have it. Like it's all the different things that you need to connect to it. And then finally, this may not seem like something you'd grab, but they have this little array of things. Now, I bought a lot more than what comes with the array, and I just keep this in a bag. And has solved probably the most number of problems that I have building, connecting on site is this one little square. So other things.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was from SmallRig or somebody else, but there was a cheese plate that had a VESA mount screws in it so that you could put the cheese plate on a VESA mount. So if you had a monitor arm that you wanted to use as it's amazing. Jason, wrap us up.
Yeah, last thing. Since you mentioned HDMI, by the way, same price and very, very similar. This is Ubiquity HDMI, $20. Same thing that Apple used to charge, and I find them to be quite good.
And one last thing, this is the arm not to get. So these larger arms here, they just don't. They don't like this part here to mount doesn't have enough oomph to it. So I have lots of these, but I wouldn't buy any more.
It's like, hey,
it's where you start. You're like, oh, it's not very expensive. I'm going to buy those, and then you buy 10 of them, and then you're like, I'm never using these again. And so
I feel like Rodney Dangerfield and Caddyshack. I'm like, I need one of these and 2 of those and 5 of those and a box of them.
Exactly.
It's amazing. Dangerous to end the hour on what did you buy from SmallRig recently? Because we're like, oh, and I got this and this and this. Hey, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much to the panel for being here. Such a fun morning. I can feel my brain expanding every single Friday morning, and it's all thanks to the life experience that comes here every single day. Can't do it without you. Also can't do it without our back-end crew working all the time, not just during the show, but also around the show, not just to make us look and sound good, but to keep us organized moving forward. There's a volunteer village that is constantly pushing us, and thank you so much. And the last group that we couldn't do without is our producers. Thank you so much for asking such great questions. It's thanks to you that we have something to open our minds to, so we really appreciate it. If we would have had to run around and ask all these questions in person today, that'd be the Tlaloc Traversal, and that's 46,000 miles, 74,000 kilometers, 362 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in after hours.
I feel like the most visible part, which is us, is the smallest part of office hours, right? It's like an iceberg and, really tiny coming out of the top of the ocean and then gigantic going down.
I just can't figure out if I want to ask Jonas to do a special first on switchers in the cloud or Jonas Dawdle. Case your pie.
I think you just did.
All of it.
It's the name is so good. Case your pie.
It's funny. We used to do these super long Saturday shows where there's the one
Super Saturday, Sabado, Gigantico.
That wasn't even that. It just was Saturday. And there's these shows that are so long that we don't have VODs of it because it went on for 10 hours. We built pies and we started with a little bit of networking, then we went over to some Dante, some audio, and then we spent the next 2 hours building a Raspberry Pi.